Welcome to Sunday Jesus service, a very interesting Sunday Jesus service today. We're going to be looking at UFOs and aliens, and all around the place we're seeing Christians talk about aliens and UFOs as being demons, manifestations of demons and all things evil. So we're going to explore religious history today, and we're going to look at how Christians have perceived demons and UFOs throughout religious history. And we see that in religious art. That's going to deeply surprise you. So I don't know how long this video ended up being, obviously, because I'm at the beginning right now, but stick around. There's a lot to get through, and it's all going to be really interesting stuff, okay? And you've got to get through to the end, because the end is the good part. That's all the good part. So UFOs and aliens. We're going to look at what are UFOs, what are aliens, how does Jesus fit into this, and what is about to happen. I feel I'm in a position where I can fairly accurately predict a lot of the next things that are going to occur. I've been doing this for a very long time, and everything is moving in the direction that I've been saying for almost 20 years. And we're going to keep moving in that direction. So not going to get too distracted, sidetracked here, but we will come back and we will talk about issues that come out of all of this, because there's a lot more to talk about. So first of all, let's begin with some video. We're going to look at some recent videos, and let me just turn off my spell checking here. And I have to comment on these videos. That's the law. You know, if you play a little clip, you've got to comment on it. So we're going to stop it and give some commentary on it. But these clips, as we go through, we're going to look at Obama's recent comment about aliens, which kind of perturbed Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump gave a response. We're going to look at Lauren Boebert and Anna Paulina Luna. And we're going to look at an interview between Kohart and Grush. We're going to look at an interview between Gates and Burchett. And then we're going to look at a kind of a funny animation by AI of Trump and aliens. I think it's just kind of humorous. It doesn't, it's not evidence of anything, but it's fun to look at. So let's go through these. I've got these queued up here, and let's hope this works. I'm going to have to, whoops, wrong window. I'm going to overlap these things a little bit. It'd be nice if my software here would handle video, but it doesn't. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this over here, and let's hope it works. Oh, it won't right now. I need to turn a button on. Sorry. We don't normally do videos if this is the first video of mine you've watched. But this will work. This will work just fine. So let's start off with what Obama said.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the?
Would they hide it from the President of the United States? Of course, they would hide it from the President of the United States. But so he's just admitted aliens are real. Trump didn't like him doing this. Are they in cahoots with each other? Possibly. Let's see what Obama says next.
First question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Oh, he already said it. I'm sorry. Let's go back. Let's go back here. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Listen carefully.
In what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
Is there an enormous conspiracy that they would hide from the President of the United States? Yeah, of course. One revelation that we must have is that there is another government. There is we talk sometimes about, one world government. We used to talk about that a little more than we do today. But there is a one world government. There is a globalist government. And, we might call it the deep state or the throw some other names around. I don't think we have a proper name. Maybe they don't have a proper name, but there is another governing body of people, of families that are over and above governments, that have their own people across governments of the world so that they can manage things. There is another government, and that's an important revelation to have. What is this government? Where do they meet? Who are they? A lot of people have done different research into those kinds of things. Not my field of study, but no doubt there is another government. There's another government over the top of us.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real.
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't.
So, I mean, people have been talking about this. Here's Donald Trump talking about what Obama just said and said, well, he shouldn't have done that. He took it out of classified information. And now he's going to talk about declassifying it to save Obama's butt, which is why I ask, are they in cahoots here? I think they probably are. I think this is too big of an issue for, squabbles between former presidents. I'm sure they're having conversations about how to handle this. We are in the process right now of alien disclosure. That's very obvious. So let's keep going.
I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
Well, the president can declassify anything that he wants to,
Well,
so if you want to make an announcement.
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
We know illegal aliens are real.
Yeah, illegal.
Okay,
Only
so this is
illegals.
Trump. Now
I
let's
am in
look at
an unofficial
Lauren Boebert.
bipartisan kind of group task force. Congressman Jared Moskowitz and Anna Paulina Luna, Eric Burleson, and we've gone in and seen some of the classified documents. And there's some really interesting things there. And I don't want to pull an Obama and say classified information that I can't. But I'm really excited that this is coming out. I hope it's not another distraction. Remember during COVID, we learned aliens were real. There were UFOs, there were UAPs. And then everybody's like, yeah, so what?
During COVID. So she's referring to these interesting craft that were flying mainly over New Jersey. All kinds of video captured by people of these things. I think most of them were just drones that were using, a standard rotary propeller engine because you could hear it as they were flying overhead. Generally don't get those sounds from UFOs, from outside of the planet. But it's interesting that she's talking about this as though that was disclosure and we all missed it. Well, it wasn't. When our skies are filled with UFOs, which they will be soon, that'll be a different thing than what happened in New Jersey. It won't even look the same. But let's just listen again to what she had to say here. Let's see if I can find this. Listen carefully.
And seen some of the classified documents. And there's some really interesting things there. And I don't want to pull an Obama and say classified information that I can't. But I'm really excited that this is coming out. I hope it's not another distraction. Remember,
I hope it's not another distraction.
During COVID, we learned aliens were real.
During COVID, we learned that aliens were real? No, I don't think we did, actually. But this is a member of Congress. And, people have got different opinions on Anna Paulina and Boebert and things. I understand. But they do have access to information that you and I do not have access to. I would also say I've got information that she doesn't have access to, too. You should probably contact me, Lauren. I could really fill you in on something, too, or connect some dots together.
There were UFOs, there were UAPs, and then everybody's like, yeah, so what? And so I hope this isn't just another let's just put it out there and see if they catch it this time.
Why is she talking like there is a intentional, willful, contrived effort to put information out there?
But I think there's going to be some interesting information.
This is recent. I don't know if this was yesterday or the day before, but this is very, very recent. It's going to be interesting to see what information. She obviously knows about some of this information.
I think you should feel comfortable telling us. I don't think we're going to tell anyone.
Yeah.
It's a safe space. Yeah.
And so this is, what is her name? Paulina? Anna Paulina Luna. It's an interesting name. I cannot find my mouse. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get this to go like that.
You know, so you're saying that the Air Force has covered up UAP sightings. So, you know, if there is potentially, is it because it's technology that we have that they don't want anyone to know that we have militarily? Or is it that it's a foreign actor who has some abilities in technology and things that spin in ways that we can't understand?
Before she answers, I want to make a comment. The video that we're about to see here is fake. Fake, I mean, it's real recorded footage, but the way they have made the footage is fake. We'll come back to what she said. This is actually important. A lot of people just want to latch onto anything to do with UFOs. Now, we'll look at some of the UFOs that I saw during my life. I've seen multiple UFOs. They're not hard to see today because there's a lot going on in the sky. But I'm also really kind of hardcore on debunking fake videos. Probably 1 out of every 100 videos that I see, because I see so much every day, it all comes across my feeds, are fake. And you can tell they're fake, or I can tell they're fake very easily. This is fake, and I want to just give you a little bit of a look at what's going on here. Let me turn off the audio for 1 second so that we're not distracted by the audio. And then let's keep playing this. Watch the... You can hear it through my mic, but look at the little triangle there and the way it's flashing. That triangle has FAA lights flashing on it. That is a aircraft. Now, why does it look like a triangle? Because this is a person that has got a phone, and they have, I don't really have anything that's like a monocle, but he has a night vision monocle here he's looking with. And let's put it this way around. So like this is where we look through, right? And he's putting his iPhone up to it like this and recording it. But what they've also done, and because you can replicate this yourself very easily, is they've used some duct tape and they've made a triangular iris on the end of their night vision monocle. And what that will do with creating a triangular iris is all bright light sources like that are going to come through looking like triangles. That is not a triangle craft. That is a plane. And so this kind of fakery is out there to a massive degree. So, you know, when you're trying to talk to people about this in a serious way, and those people are seeing this kind of thing and all kinds of other made up images, by so many people, especially now with AI, that's not real helpful. Let's make a concerted effort to know what we're posting, to only post authentic videos or authentic to the best of our ability, and not things that are easily faked here like this. So let's just put this audio back on here and we'll listen to what she had to say. But for me, this is kind of important that we don't fall for these kinds of hoaxes. And it's wild that here is Fox News, though it's kind of their reputation, you know, fake news and all, just like CNN. Here they are playing a piece of faked footage, very easy to fake. Anybody can fake anything like this. You can do this yourself. If you've got planes flying low enough over you, you're close enough to an airport or an air corridor, you can do this with just any camera. You can create a little triangular iris with duct tape and go outside and film, and you'll see that all the bright lights turn out to be triangles. And that's why we're seeing this triangle with FAA strobes. Like you can see it now as we play it, you'll notice it.
Is it that it's a foreign actor who has some abilities in technology and things that spin in ways that we can't understand?
Based on our interviews that we've conducted.
And you can see there, sorry I'm interrupting the dialogue, but you see here he's literally, that's the iPhone camera looking at the end of the monocle, the eyepiece end of the monocle, and he's going to bring it closer
that we
just
can't
completely
understand?
fake.
Based on our interviews that we've conducted, not just in person, but also
You
to,
can see that.
given some of the testimony that
The
we've
FAA
received,
lights, it's
we
just
do
a
have
total
reason to
giveaway.
believe that this tech is not created by mankind.
Okay, I'm
However,
sorry, I missed it.
interviews that
Let's
we've
go.
conducted, not just in person, but also to, given some of the testimony that we've received, we do have reason to believe that this tech is not created by mankind. However, it is also possible that there are certain advanced weapons that the U.S. government may have that they're denying us access to. But here's the problem. When you have unelected bureaucrats denying access to members of government that are supposed to oversee and write the checks for that federal spending, and then we're also getting reports that there are people being threatened, whether it be physically, whether there have been, interesting deaths associated with people that have been coming forward as whistleblowers, which has been brought up in some of the testimony that we've received, not just myself, but you saw recently there was a movie that came out, The Age of Disclosure, where this is also referenced now by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. This is one of the most bipartisan and bicameral things in Washington, D.C. And so we definitely are looking forward to sharing this and exploring this further with the American people.
Okay, so information is going to come to light. There's information that's floating around out there. We don't know if it's real or false. But what we're going to do as we dig into this is take a more historical look at these things. We don't have to rely just on evidence from the present day. We've got a lot of ancient evidence, or maybe not ancient, but through the last 2,000 years. Let's keep going. All right, so this is Colhert and Grush, and this is a very important little interview here. I wish the window would stop resizing.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
You're kidding.
No. I thought it was totally nuts, and I thought at first I was being deceived. It was a ruse. People started confiding in me. They approached me. I have plenty of current and former senior intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me they were a part of a program. They named the program. I've never heard of it. And they told me, based on their oral testimony, and they provided me documents and other proof, that there was, in fact, a program that the UAP task force was not read into.
You are alleging that the US government has been concealing the existence on this planet of alien life.
I would couch it as non-human intelligence, NHI, like we would like to say in our language.
Why do you say that? Why do you say NHI?
I don't want to necessarily denote origin. I don't think we have all the data to say, oh, they're coming from a certain location, and I couch it as somebody who studied physics where maybe they're coming from a different physical dimension as described in quantum mechanics. We know there's extra dimensions due to high energy particle collisions, etc. And there's a theoretical framework to explain that, yeah.
Just let me cut to the quick though. You're saying there is an intelligent species engaging with this planet?
Yes, that's potentially extraterrestrial, yeah.
I speak for everybody sitting at home. That is a shock.
It was to me, and I had a lot of sleepless nights.
Grush.
So some of these whistleblowers are coming out and providing information. I don't accept that he's a whistleblower. I think he's on payroll. He's doing his job. We are in the midst of a disclosure event, and this began some years ago. It was derailed at times by people in positions of power. There's a lot of fakes out there, like Tom DeLonge, who started the To the Stars thing, and that's just a total CIA operation, obviously. And then we get, gentlemen like Grush, who has a lot of information, appears to come across pretty credible. But let's keep going.
You've previously...
Right now, Grush was just talking about how they might not be coming from outside the planet. And maybe they're here already. Well, we're going to see that as we dig into the history, that they have been here already. They've been here a long time, at least some of them. And we also have had many, many reports that they're in the water. Now, Jesus, Enki, Lord of the Water, So we appear to have underwater bases, which are basically impossible for humans to get to. They're too deep. They're too remote. We have big submarines and all, but they're slow and they're limited in how deep they can go and all kinds of things. So listen to what Burchett has to say here.
Said on our program you believe that there are underwater bases that are being accessed through this transit from extraterrestrial beings. Given how many of these sightings are from naval aircraft and naval vessels off the coast of San Diego, is that where you believe some of these underwater bases are likely to be located?
Yeah, if they're there, there's 5 areas in our waters that I've been told by military officials and former military officials that they would have to be, because.
No, I would say that's pretty specific. It's not a few, it's not a couple, it's not a handful, it's 5. There's 5. It's pretty specific.
Outside of quantum physics, there's no way something can travel light years. I mean, how are you going to pack for that?
So this is a common argument that's used. I find it to be such a facetious argument. This idea that travel through space is limited by the speed of light, I think, is an archaic idea that I just wholly reject out of hand. It comes from the same kind of reasoning we see with Christians who try to fit everything into their worldview. Everything has to fit into the Christianity worldview, or there's big problems. Representative Burchett here is doing basically the same thing, not with Christianity, but with physics. Well, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. Says who? Einstein? No doubt there are ways to traverse the universe in ways that are much, much faster than the speed of light. And I think that we're just not open-minded enough about how things work. We get stuck in our ways. Some physicists said we can't travel faster than the speed of light. And the speed of light is a constant, which it's not. I just don't see this as a problem at all. We're going to find ways to be able to traverse, distances with no regard to the speed of light. And I think, quantum entanglement gives us great clues into that as well.
No, I about have to take a pickup truck if I want to travel from Knoxville to Nashville just for all the food and supplies I got to take. So honestly, Matt.
Food and supplies are here. That's why they stop here. They stop here to gain water, to gain other resources. They cut cows up in fields and take them with them. They're coming by and having snacks. They don't need to take it with them.
Light years, that's just out of our realm, unless we talk quantum physics, and that's kind of voodoo to me anyway. I don't really understand it at all. I know what they're telling me. True. I just don't. It's hard for me to grasp. So something would have to be here, either for millennium or a base of some sort, and that's where it would have to be. That's what I've been told.
Okay, it doesn't have to be, but the other things that he said that he said it has to be a base here. Or it doesn't have to be, but I think there are bases here under the water, and perhaps on land as well, that are well concealed. I don't think these problems he's raising are actually problems at all. And
I hope we get to the bottom of it. I doubt we will, but this is a start.
Okay.
Just get off.
This is just some humor. This is actually pretty funny. So this is Donald Trump, as you can see. And he's just met with the aliens. So let's take a look at this.
Just got off the phone with the aliens, and they really like me. I have a great relationship with them. But I wish I didn't FaceTime with them because they're really nasty looking, and I made some unpleasant jokes. But I think they like me. We have a deal like you wouldn't believe that's about to happen. I found out they have oil like you wouldn't believe. They don't even touch it. They told me, you're crazy for using oil. I said, you're crazy for not using oil. What's wrong with these aliens? You think aliens would be smarter than us, but apparently they're not, because all they wanted for the oil, think of this, all they wanted for the oil is Marco Rubio. I guess he has some kind of special lineage. They really want Marco Rubio. They love him. And I thought, that's fantastic. Look, Marco's not going to be happy about it, but one person for trillions and trillions of barrels of oil, you have to do it. So Marco's not going to be too happy about it, but he's probably already on his way. I made the phone call.
So we're all talking about this right now, and it's kind of starting to push the Epstein files aside. But what Epstein was doing was absolutely integrated into this. There's many things people can look at Epstein and say, well, this was the main focus. I tell you that the main focus wasn't diddling kids. That certainly was something that was something that he did and that he corralled others into doing, probably for power. He was also involved in genetics and cloning. He wanted to create his own little birthing center and produce lots of genetically controlled offspring. But the main thing that Epstein was doing was bringing gravity physicists together to talk about the very technologies, the very physics that power UFOs. Everything to do with gravity, mass removal. So having an object where you can envelop it in a field that will negate the effects of any gravitic force outside of the mass, therefore giving it no inertia to the outside environment, enabling you to do these crazy right-hand turns that we see them doing. Gravity propulsion. If you want to propel these craft, then the best way that you're going to do that is with gravity, being able to push and pull. So gravity transducers, you're going to need at least 3 of those to balance the craft. Just before Epstein was arrested, he had gravity physicists at his island. This was one of his longest running interests, going all the way back to the Harvard math department. And Eric Weinstein has really spoken about this quite a lot the last week or so, where he's realized that Jeffrey Epstein was spying on him and knew all about his research and knew about his research to a degree that shouldn't have been possible. So there's other people in Eric Weinstein's life that he's been confiding in that have been talking to Epstein, or the intelligence that Epstein is able to gather through different intelligence agencies, obviously in Israel and the US predominantly, have been intercepting communications with Eric, emails, telephone calls, text messages, things, and relaying those to Jeffrey Epstein. But the main focus of Jeffrey Epstein's life has been gravity physics. And no one's really talking about that. So we will come back and we will talk about that at another time. Let's move on now. So we've looked and we've seen how in these videos, everyone from Obama to Trump to members of Congress, to whistleblowers, to former members and current members of Congress, they're all talking about the UFO issue, UFOs and aliens. Well, we should explore that a little more. Let's look at what do Christians say about aliens and UFOs. And these are the common things that you're hearing out there in the internet world, that they're demons, that UFOs are manifestations of demons, that they're fallen angels. Now, of course, this betrays a misunderstanding of the word angel to begin with, because an angel is not a specific type of being. An angel is a category term. It describes somebody doing something. If you are a messenger being sent to go and deliver a message, then you are an angel. That's what angel means. They talk about Project Bluebeam, which is an old thing now, but people can't let it go. This is the idea that was very closely linked to holograms. Basically, they're going to project these things into the sky. We've seen China do some stuff like that, and it's just not very good. It probably never will be any good. Now everyone's moving to micro drones to create, pictures in the sky and things. And they talk about a fake alien invasion, which I think is highly intentional. Now, when we look at this is so radically different from the historical position of Christianity throughout the ages. And we're going to look at artwork from Christianity through the ages so we can get a glimpse of how they saw things. So let's do that now. UFOs. Well, let's start off with the UFOs I've seen. I've been privileged to see a bunch of UFOs, and I think once you see a UFO, some of the luster, the excitement kind of wears off. I find that people that are most hyped up about UFOs are people that have not seen a UFO before, and they want to believe. And so I don't believe in UFOs. I've seen many of them. And what I've done here is we've detailed some of these because I wanted to show you. So I've kind of gone into some detail. I got a little carried away with this first one because it brought back so many memories. But 1987 was the first time I saw a UFO. I saw my first UFO on February 6, 1987. You think, how can you be that precise, Israel? That was a long time ago. Because it was on Waitangi Day in New Zealand. And so it's the same day every year. And I knew how old I was, and so I was easily able to work out. Now, I might be plus or minus 1 year here, but I don't think so. I think that's pretty accurate. It might be 86, might be 88, but it's probably 1987. So I saw my first UFO on February 6, 1987. We were urban camping in a van in... Nothing changes. We were urban camping in a van in the parking lot of the Waitangi treaty grounds. I'm in a van in a parking lot right now. How funny is that? We had just laid down to sleep, and a bright green craft sped overhead. So it's a small van, and there's a bench seat, and so I'm 12 years old, and I'm lying down on this bench seat, and I'm looking out the window, and I see this green glowing craft go straight over the top of me. Now, I wanted to provide some details on this because this is all real. So here's a map of New Zealand, and this is the Waitangi Treaty Grounds where we were. And if we zoom in, this is the parking lot, and nothing has changed since this happened. New Zealand doesn't move as fast as some other countries. But we were here in this parking lot, somewhere here. I think we were on the end here, and just looking out the window and saw this thing. And I was with this gentleman here who passed away in 2008, Neville Logan. Now, I was an orphan, and he was a cartoonist. He is known more in Christian circles than anything for Twerp, this little character, which he taught everyone to draw, and I can draw to this day. And so here is an example of some of his cartoon art. This was something that was made for somebody, and they decided to upload it to the internet because there's not a lot of information about Neville Logan on the internet. And so they've blotched out some personal parts here. So he befriended me. I was an orphan, and he was a great guy, and we drove all over the upper part of the North Island together doing all kinds of adventures. And on Waitangi Day in 1987, we came to the Waitangi Day celebration. This place was totally packed every year. This is the major treaty in New Zealand between the Māori and the white, the Pākehā. And we were here. And so he was actually here with his art easel doing stuff for kids and teaching them how to create cartoons. And it was late when we left, and we decided we were just going to sleep in the parking lot. I'm not sure what day that was. Okay, so that's 1987. That was my first little UFO. That wasn't that interesting. This is the most significant one. So, 2017, I could work out the date because I have some other things. I had a friend that came over from Australia that was hanging out with me at the same time, and so I could look through records and work out pretty much what day it was, definitely what week it was. Top level of apartment complex in Boulder, Colorado, looking north. I noticed the stars are turning off, like something was in the way. And I make out this large triangle that was darker than the sky behind it. So I'm just sitting in a chair, and I'm looking north, and I notice stars are turning off and reappearing. And then I'm noticed like they're doing it in a line, and I keep paying attention, and then I could see that there's this black triangle that is darker than the sky, and I had AI try to replicate this as much as possible. This is not looking north. This is looking west. It decided to throw the flat irons in there from Boulder, very recognizable, but I'm actually looking that way, not that way. And it was more of an equilateral triangle than this, but I had it create this. It had these very faint red lights on the leading edges. They actually started more up near the tip here. And these were so faint that you couldn't see them if you were looking straight at the craft. But if you know how your eye gets this little blind spot, and if you look slightly off, then you can see those things better. And so you could see that there were these little red bars of lights down the sides of the craft. And this is very much, what it looked like. And you could notice the craft because it was big and it was blocking the stars. So when you see something like this, and, it wasn't just like a 1 second thing, or there it's gone. This thing is slowly gliding almost right over the top of me. It's about a slight, maybe 15, 20 degree angle. And so I got to observe this thing for about 30 to 40 seconds before it was out of view. And so what I did is I got an iPad and I pulled up Google Maps, and I'm positioning it so I can see where I am. And I wanted to see where is that thing heading. And Denver International Airport is not very far away. And that's the exact trajectory it was on. It definitely wasn't a plane. It was completely silent, and it was massive. I mean, you could park a large plane inside of this thing. It was no small little, it's not one of these TR-3Bs that people have seen and photographed back in the day, and now it looks like they've got a new model that people have taken some photos of that's floating around, if they're legitimate. When you see something like that, and you're looking at it and contemplating it as you're looking at it, that changes you. This thing could not have been built anywhere on Earth because there's nowhere on Earth large enough to build something like this undercover, out in the open. Of course, it'll be seen by satellite. Maybe you could say you could build it in the ocean, but these kinds of anti-gravity craft are going to be created in zero-G. They're going to be built in orbit. These things can't touch down or they're going to fall apart. They're too big. So when you see something like this, that really changes you. Oopsie daisy. Okay. Now, 2021, in the Black Hills of South Dakota, I was with a friend, and we were intentionally watching satellites to see if we could see a UFO instead. We were watching satellites to see if they would change course or stop or whatever. If you do this long enough, you will see UFOs in the sky. And satellites, as they pass overhead, this particularly happened when the Iridium network was still operating, and they had large solar panels that reflected a lot of lights, and we would they would catch the sunlight in such a way that it would flare very bright in the sky for just a moment. And we would call these iridium flares. So I'm very familiar with observing satellites passing over and things like that. But if you go outside and you watch the satellites go over, occasionally you're going to see one that's going to do something satellites can't do, like stop and change direction. Satellites are on a constant orbit. They are not able to change direction, and not like that. They can change direction very, very, very slowly over time using their onboard propulsion, but not like, a right angle or anything like that whatsoever. So I was pointing them out with a green laser pointer, and one stopped. And it's funny because I was talking about it. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, here it is. And my friend couldn't see it. So I'm pointing it with the laser pointer. And so now we're watching it, and I'm not constantly shining it with this laser pointer. Not that would be a problem. It's obviously not a plane. And, we just think it's a satellite. Look, here's another satellite. And yet I felt, just keep watching this one. And it stopped. It stopped dead in its tracks. Well, I have one of those pretty powerful green lasers. And so I start to shine it at it. It's clearly not an aircraft. There's no FAA flashing lights like on those fake things that Fox News had on. And the thing starts flashing back to us. And my friend really spun out. I mean, this was wild. Could it have been coincidence? Sure. But it did appear that it was responding to being flashed with my laser. And it flashed, and then it continued. That's a UFO. So when I wiggled the laser at it, it flashed at us and then keep moving. I just kind of made a little AI image of what that kind of looked like here. So I encourage you to get outside and look, and that brings us to this one. When have I seen UFOs? All the time. There's lots of activity going on above us. If you watch the sky long enough, you'll see things, though it depends on where you are. There are certain corridors where a lot of UFOs are seen, and there are other parts of the world where they're just not flying around there, and so you're not going to see them. Usually isolated remote areas is where they tend to go. If they're just passing through, then they're going to go to water sources where there is meat roaming around. So always be looking at the sky. You can get just look with the naked eye, and then a pair of binoculars. That's all you really need. A telescope is not going to help you here because the field of view is too narrow. So I have some astronomical binoculars. They're kind of big, but just a small handheld pair of binoculars is really all you need. You don't want to narrow the field of view too much, or you won't be able to find, if you see something with the naked eye, it's going to be harder to see it through the binoculars. And even a good pair of binoculars will enable you to see, like the moons of Jupiter, and depending on how close Saturn is, the rings of Saturn and things. And I think it's good to become familiar with the sky. But now let's look at historical art. And then we're going to look at Old Testament UFOs and Jesus and UFO connections. Now, we have a bit of historical art to get through. I kind of wanted to overload you here so that you knew we weren't just picking and choosing. There's a lot to show you here. There's just an awful lot. So we're going to look at, actually, let's switch these around. I thought about this while I was dreaming last night. Let's look at the demons in religious art first, because the Christian is saying that these things are demons. Let's look at how Christians through the ages in art rendered a demon. And then we're going to compare that to how they rendered UFOs. And in some cases, it's the exact same artist. If I had more time, I would have linked these up together with the same artist, but you'll be able to see the name. So let's look at Raphael. And he's got two here to look at, William Blake and Carlo Crivelli. And look at how they render demons or the devil. So we see here, we've got what is obviously an interpretation of an angel pinning down a demon or the devil. Here we've got St. Michael and the dragon. Now remember, the dragon is a flying thing. So this thing has wings, right? But here we've got Michael slaying the dragon. Does the dragon look like a UFO, like at all? No. Okay. William Blake, the great red dragon and the woman clothed with the sun. This is a reference to what's going on in Revelation. So here we've got an angel here, and we've got this red dragon here, which looks like a person with a long tail. But do either of these are both flying things, do either look like a UFO? No. And this one looks a bit like a love heart, but that's just its wings. Now, what about this one? Carlo Crivelli drawing St. Michael. This is a very strange one. There's a lot of strange art from antiquity. So I've got two naked people in. It's interesting. But here he is standing with his terribly crooked toes, poor guy, on a demon. And the demon looks like a weird person, but it's not a UFO, right? So when we look at demons in religious art, we do not find anything that resembles UFOs. Now we're going to look at something that, if you haven't seen any of these before, some of these are really going to blow your mind. Because religious artists through time drew plenty of UFOs in artwork. And some of them are interesting, some of them are very startling. So let's now explore those. UFOs in religious art. There's a lot to get through here. I think it's important to have a good sample. Some of these you probably have seen, and some of them you probably haven't. So I'm going to skip reading all of these. You'll see them on the screen, and you can pause and read them if you want to go and look these things up. We're going to spend our time looking at the images themselves, okay? So we've got this image here. And we see, you know what? These are not big enough. So what I'm going to do is just open all of these and stretch all of these open together. I don't mind if you see them all like this. It's all good. Let me just, that way I can zoom into these much better. Okay, that's what we want. So here we've got this metallic sphere with some widget down the bottom here and two very obvious antennas here with little bases on the antennas. And this is all in Christian art. So like this is the glorification of the Eucharist. What? What? Wait, I'm not. So, okay, how? So this is, I guess, Jesus and the Father. And what on earth is this? And of course, the artist is not here for us to ask him, like, dude, what's going on here? We can even see the reflection here of the Holy Spirit represented as a dove above this, and it seems to be projecting a little blob of light onto this metallic sphere. What is this doing in religious art? Now we've got this one here, Madonna and Child. So this is supposed to be Mary with Jesus, and this has been recognized by many people. What is this here? Now, I couldn't find a high resolution version, but I have seen higher resolution version, and this is like a blob with little spikes coming off of it. All right, this is a famous one, the baptism of Christ. So here we've got John the Baptizer baptizing Jesus. Okay, but then we've got these 4 rays of lights, and what do they lead to? What is that? How does this make any sense? Now, I say, and I've said for a long time, that at the baptism of Jesus, and we hear the voice from the Father, this voice is being projected by a UFO that is carrying the Father at the time above Jesus and broadcasting the audio down so people can hear it. But this was painted in the early 1700s, and this guy apparently thinks the same thing I do. We don't have this, it's not a picture of like, you know, God the Father floating in the clouds. It's a UFO. It's a circular disc. It's got some lights on it, and it's got these 4 beams that are coming. Like, what is this? How did this end up in Christian art? Okay, let's move on. This is the Annunciation with Saint Emedius. This is in 1486. And this is a beautiful high-resolution scan of this image, which is just wild. Look at the resolution. We could zoom in even more. Here we've got, is this Mary? And the Holy Spirit coming down to Mary. But if we follow this beam, we're going to cut through the building here, and it's going to come out this hole they've drawn in the building. And we'll just keep following this all the way. And what do we end up with? Whoa. Is that just a cloud? UFOs like to hide in the clouds. They appear to be able to create clouds around them, at least some of them. This is giving us the wheel within a wheel thing we're about to read about in Ezekiel. It's not a sun. It's a beam of light coming down, but this is definitely not any representation of the sun. We've got shadows here that show the sun is actually in a different part of the picture over here somewhere, that's shining down and creating this shadow on this thing here. And I'm not sure how well he's actually drawn his shadows, because this shadow here is in total conflict, but whatever. So we've got this UFO that is blasting down to Mary. What is this doing in Christian art? Okay, here we've got crucifixion fresco. This is from the 16th century, from the 1500s. Jesus on the cross. But what else do you notice? We've got these jellyfish-like objects. We've got one here on the left in red and another here kind of in gray on the right. And this one in red is not easily discernible, and the red has faded over time, reducing the contrast. So we've got a little bit of a retouch here. And in this retouched version, and I have to caveat this, it's possible that they used a vector line tracing app and it has put in the right angles here, these sharp right angles like this. If that is in the actual original painting and not just an artifact of somebody trying to improve the contrast, that would be very interesting. But I'd have to see the photo like right up close, probably with a loop, to know if that is the case or not. So have to be a little bit careful of these things, of these right angles. But if those right angles actually are here in this image, we just can't tell with this blur. That would be very interesting. But why do we have them here in the first place? What are they doing here? From my theology, this everything we're looking at here, makes total sense. My theology is not standing in isolation. It finds support through history, right? That's how I've built my theology, is looking at all of the data through history, trying to understand what is it all telling us. Let's move on. There's more. This is another crucifixion fresco. And where is this from? This is from the 1300s. And what do you notice here? We've got Jesus on the cross, and then we've got these guys. Now, you'll have people speculate that, well, these aren't UFOs, dummy. This represents this or this represents that. It's representing a planetary body, and, they thought that there was a person controlling it, or it's personified by the planets, like we've got Neptune and Poseidon and things. Interesting, maybe, but they sure went to a lot of trouble when we zoom in on this. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, really? I find it all very interesting. The 10,000 martyrs on Mount Ararat. So where is it? This is from the 1500s, and a very interesting painting. But as we keep going up to the top, what do we see? We see a round disc, wheels within wheels, and we see angels. There's 4, maybe 5 angels here. Oh, I guess that's another one. 6 angels that are obviously coming out of this thing. Doesn't leave a lot to the imagination. So why is it in religious art we see all of this kind of thing all the time? Foundation of Santa Maria. So here we've got this religious scene, and we've got all of these things which you could say, well, they're just clouds. They're strangely uniform clouds. possible, but I'd say, if the artist can draw a beautiful flowing hills like this in the background, if they can handle this kind of perfect architecture, if they can draw faces pretty well for that time period, right? A lot of faces from this time period were not really that great. But here, look at these faces. Like, look at this guy. This guy looks like a modern person. They all look like just modern people. Then why do the clouds look like this? And then why do we have this cloud that looks like this with these people in the clouds, Jesus and Mary by the looks of it? Now, this one I could say, sure, it's just religious expression. This one is not as interesting to me as some of the others. But for other people, they find this incredibly interesting. I think this one has even been used on some book covers to talk about these kinds of things. I find this very interesting, not as interesting perhaps as some of the others. And then we've got this one here. I'm not even going to pretend to be able to pronounce that. But we have in Romania on a church wall this old painting, and we have a representation of a church on a hilltop, and then we have this disc with this cloud behind it as if signifying motion, and this flower looking UFO. Why do we find these UFOs throughout religious art? And, there's just a whole bunch of these things, and it warrants looking at these things and at least admitting that there's something unusual going on, that religious painters through time had no problem painting UFOs in their scenes, even at the baptism of Jesus. Now, this is from the early 1700s, and this guy has the same idea as I have about the baptism of Jesus. Yahweh is here, he's watching, he's seeing all this going on, he drags Jesus into the wilderness to test him. I would say this is probably the plainest UFO in religious art. I mean, this thing has a edge here that is reflecting light. It has here what maybe it scratches on the painting over time, but it looks like it's got some cluster of lights here, and 4 continuous beams of light that come all the way down to John the Baptizer baptizing Jesus. None of these artists drew UFOs that in any way, shape, or form represented anything evil, sinister, demonic, satanic at all. Rather, the complete opposite. The association with UFOs in religious art through time always has a holy spirit to it, feel to it, connection to it. Why is it that modern Christians have completely flipped 180 on this and see these things as demonic? If I created this painting today, Christians would use it against me. They would say, look at Israel Anderson creating these images of demonic entities in, religious imagery. But in all of these situations, the UFOs have a connection to God. Nothing sinister, nothing evil, nothing demonic. Why now do we have the complete opposite going on in Christians today? Why? Are these painted by 2 different people? They are. They're painted by 2 different people, and yet these two pictures of Jesus being crucified here And we've got these UFO-looking blobs here and in here. Two different artists, two different time periods, two different parts of the world. And the detail. You know, this is evidence that demands a verdict. Apologies to Josh McDowell. We have to be able to examine these things and reason. What's going on here? Let's look at some of the text. So in the Old Testament, we have Ezekiel's wheel within wheels, and we won't read through all of this, but you can see here, this is Ezekiel 1:14 through 21. The whole chapter has a whole bunch of different interesting pictures of what's going on, but we see here, you know, they looked like a wheel within a wheel. Whenever they moved in any of the four directions without turning as they moved. The rims of the wheels were large and frightening. They were covered with eyes, which is probably like lights or windows. So what's Ezekiel seeing? When Elijah was taken up, this is in 2 Kings chapter 2, as they continued walking and talking, a fiery chariot with fiery horses separated the two of them, and Elijah went to heaven in a windstorm. Chariots of fire seen around Elisha, who is the disciple of Elijah. The mountain around Elisha was full of fiery horses and chariots. Okay, so we have that in the Old Testament, and people are familiar with that. But what about Jesus and UFO connections? If we were to look in the Gospels, would we see anything there that resembles, you know, what we are familiar with today as the typical things people see when they see or they have a close encounter with a UFO? Let's see. So we have the Star of Bethlehem. After they heard the king, this is in Matthew 2, after they heard the king, they started out. The star they had seen rising led them until it was stopped over the place where the child was. They were overwhelmed with joy to see the star. Overjoyed to see a star? So this star rises towards them and then stops over the place. And people are looking for comets and retrograde planets and all these kinds of things, but like maybe the explanation is simpler. Maybe it's just a UFO. Maybe this is hell. The Elohim, the angels, are able to get around, is in vehicles. Let's look at the baptism of Jesus. Of course, we just saw that art. Then John gave in to him. After Jesus was baptized, he immediately came up from the water. Suddenly the heavens were opened, and he saw the pneuma of Theos, the Spirit of God, coming down as a dove to him. Then a voice from heaven said, "This is my son whom I love, my son with whom I am pleased." You know, I think from being a baby Christian, you know, saw this as pretty obviously a UFO instance. What about the Transfiguration? After 6 days, Jesus took only Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain where they could be alone. Jesus' appearance changed in front of them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone on earth could bleach them. Then Elijah and Moses appeared to them and were talking with Jesus, the two witnesses to the contract for humanity here. And then Peter is like, "Hey, man, let's set up some tents and other stuff." He and the others, well, here, read what, this in parenthesis is not my note. This is in the Greek text. There's a lot of the narrator notes in the Gospel, especially the Gospel of John. But here we're in the Gospel of Mark, and the person that is putting this whole text together, the Gospel of Mark, is adding his own thoughts in here to inform the reader what's going on. Peter didn't know how to respond. He and the others were terrified. Of what? You wouldn't be terrified of a couple of people standing there. It would have to be something more than that. Right? Sounds like a UFO encounter to me. It sounds like Moses and Elijah stepped out of a UFO and are having a discussion with Jesus and then leave. That would explain why Peter was terrified and didn't know what to say. I'd be terrified and wouldn't know what to say neither. Right? What about Jesus' departure? So now let's look at the first part of the book of Acts. After Jesus had said this, he was taken to heaven. A cloud hid him. So we're talking about a physical change, right? It's not just dematerializing. No, he's hidden by a cloud, which means he's going up into the clouds. A cloud hid him, so they could no longer see him. They were staring into the sky. Okay, as he departed, suddenly 2 men in white clothes stood near them. Suddenly, what? Where'd they come from? They asked, "Why are you men from Galilee standing here looking at the sky? Jesus, who was taken from you to heaven, will come back in the same way that you saw him go to heaven." What about on his return? Here we look at Mark 13, and we can see this in other Gospels as well. Then people will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And this glory word is very interesting. So, but we'll save that for another study. So we've got serious connections between UFOs and the Bible, right? Why is that? And why is it that now Christians have this idea, and not all Christians, of course, but a very large number of them, are saying things like this. Well, let me find my place here. Oh, okay. Oh, somehow that got totally moved. That's why. So this is what the Christians are saying today, but the Christians of the past didn't talk like this. This is a new thing. This is a very modern thing. The Christians of the past knew that UFOs were just a normal part of life, that God, Son Jesus, the angels, used UFOs. This wasn't peculiar. All these different people, different periods of time, no connections, no internet back then, painted UFOs in their art like it was nothing. And we have quite a lot of them. So there is something going on that the Christians that are making these claims about UFOs being demons don't really seem to grasp, right? Now, what about the aliens? Well, we could change this. I've named this the Elohim, but we could change it to the aliens. The Elohim are not from Earth. Anything not from Earth that's here on Earth is, by strict dictionary definition, an extraterrestrial. Terrestrial being the Earth, the planet. If something didn't come from here but came from outside of it, it's extraterrestrial, ET. So the Elohim, the TEs, they are by dictionary definition aliens. I mean, we use the same term with, people walking across the border. We call them illegal aliens. We're not talking about little green men, right? We're talking about just people. But as we explore the Elohim, we're going to look at different pantheons. We're going to look at the monarchy situation, how their government works, and we're going to look at images through time. They're going to be even more interesting, perhaps, than the UFO images that we just looked through. And we'll start to see that these aliens are, again, not what modern Christians are saying about them. Their ancestors had a completely different point of view than what they do today. And so we really need to ask ourselves, what has suddenly recently changed? But Christians through time saw UFOs as completely normal, something you would include in religious art. Today, the modern Christian would say that's blasphemous, that's sacrilege. how far the modern Christian has departed from historical Christians. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at who are the Elohim. Now, the Elohim are the main characters in the Bible, of course, right? Yahweh is an Elohim. The Father is an Elohim. The Elohim is one of the most misunderstood words in the entire Bible. I see people trying to define Elohim all the time. My opinion is that most people are getting it totally wrong. They want to say, I just see all kinds of contradictory, interesting things being said about it. Elohim is a category term, and we must define definition through context. The modern Christian has got so lost in the way that they do Bible study because they don't go broad anymore. They're not looking for context. They don't read the chapter before and the chapter after. They're not even reading the verse before and the verse after. They want to pull one little verse out of context and say, look, yeah, okay, great. Look at the rest of it so that you're not taking it out of context. Like John 8:58. Here they're saying that in John 8:58, where Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am, they're saying, well, that's a reference to Yahweh in the Old Testament. Really? The entirety of the discourse, which we just went through in John 8, from verse 12 through verse 59, it's all one discourse. We see Jesus saying, your father is not my father, your God is not my God. And then all of a sudden in verse 58, Jesus says the complete opposite of the entire discourse. No. And you make mistakes like that because you ignore context. And then they have the cheek to say, I'm taking things out of context. You don't even know the context. Okay. Context takes some real time and effort to understand. It takes years and years and years of study. I've studied the John 8 discourse for, 30 years of my life. There's always more to unpack there, but there's always somebody that wants to come along that picked up a Bible yesterday and tell you how wrong you are. So Elohim is a category term. It basically means those who have been set in charge of managing humans on earth. That is a basic understanding of what Elohim means. Okay, we see that in Psalm 82, where the Father is telling these people that they have been put in charge of humans, and he says, I said you are all Elohim, which means they weren't before, which means it's a category title that is applied to individuals that have been given a charge, a responsibility to look after humans. Okay? And so we can say there is an Elohim, the top Elohim who rules over all the other Elohim, and that would be Abba Father. And then he would have his sons, like Yahweh, like Jesus, right? Yahweh is not God. Yahweh is one of the Elohim. In fact, the word God we should just drop. So let's look at some very interesting things here. We've looked at some of these kinds of things before. Get that to render nicely. Let's start here. All across the planet, we find that we have these different pantheons of Elohim, people that have been put in charge of humans, right? And so as we go through these three main characters here, let me pop this open as well, or where's the thing I'm looking for here? So here we've got a picture of the Divine Council. The Divine Council is a council of Elohim. There are 12 members, just like Jesus chose 12. The number 12 is used very often in the Bible, just like other numbers. And so here we're concerned with the top three. These are all in rank. I go into the ranks in some other older videos. It's hard to know who is on the council today because it's not static. It changes. And when Yahweh rebelled against his father and tried to overthrow him and make himself the Elohim, then some of these people left along with Yahweh when Yahweh was cast down to the earth. Now, if you're a Christian here and you're hearing this for the first time, you're, what? Just please stick around, okay? What the things Christianity has told us are not true. It's a total fiction. It's a total story. It's a fantasy fiction story invented by the church fathers. So we have all the kingdoms around the world. We have one monarchy that created multiple settlements around the world. And we see this in the different pantheons. So here we're going to look at 4 different pantheons, or 5 different pantheons, actually. So we're going to look at the Bible. We're going to look at Greek, Roman, Hindu, and Sumerian pantheons. And we see that we have this crossover across all of them with the top 3 players at the top, the Father and his 2 sons. These are the 3 individuals, not a trinity, there's no trinity, that are the most involved with humans. And then others over time as well. Marduk had a lot to do with things, and some of the other names of some of the other siblings and extended family are named in the Bible, named in other texts like the book of Enoch and things like that. So we are familiar with many, many more names, and some of those names would have been on the Divine Council at some point, and maybe still are, but we don't know today because we don't have any modern records. So family, father, firstborn son, secondborn son, okay? Title, Lord of all. So the father is the Lord of all lords. The firstborn is the Lord of the water. And so we see here as we go across that we have the Lord of the water uses these particular symbols, uses the snake, uses the fish, uses water. We see across the pantheons here in the Bible, it's Jesus. In Greek, it's Poseidon. In Rome, the Roman pantheon, it's Neptune. In the Hindu pantheon, it's Vishnu. In the Sumerian pantheon, it's Enki Ea, right? And we do the same with all of them. So Lord of Lords. The symbol for the Father is a winged disc. Now, the little emoji here doesn't have an opposite one, but it's a disc with wings on either side. And in the Bible, the name for this character is Elyon, El. Jesus calls him Abba in the prayer in Gethsemane. In the Greek, that is the same individual as Kronos. In the Roman pantheon, it's the same individual as Saturn. In the Hindu pantheon, it is Brahma. In the Sumerian pantheon, it is Anu. And then we get to Yahweh. Now, Yahweh is Lord of the air. He is the second-born son. Well, we say second-born, but we don't know he was the second. He was after Jesus anyway, and quite some time after Jesus. It wasn't, their births were not close. And you're saying, wait, think Jesus was born? Yes, physically born like you and I are. The Bible tells us this. We ignore it. Genesis 1:26. We are made in the image and likeness of Elohim. Genesis 1:26-27. Male and female, just like them. We are Elohim light. We are made of the same substance that they are. Physical body, spirit inside, that is the real us. We got it from them. They are the same. I have a whole study, Yahweh, the physical God. The Bible is replete with evidence that the Elohim are physical people. It is Christianity and the church fathers that have turned them into Gnostic, disembodied apparitions. That is Gnosticism. Christianity is just another flavor of Gnosticism. So the second-born, or after-born anyway, after the firstborn, his symbols are the air. So we see the eagles, the dragon, the whirlwind. And in the Bible, that is Yahweh. And in Greek, that is Zeus. And in the Roman pantheon, that is Jupiter. And the Hindu pantheon, that is Shiva, the destroyer. And in the Sumerian pantheon, that is Enlil Nunamnir. Why do we see this? One monarchy created multiple settlements around the world, and we can keep doing this through other pantheons. But when we start to look at the family trees of different pantheons around the world, why do you think all of these major pantheons have family trees? The Greek and Roman pantheons are basically identical. Some slight variance there. There's always slight variance because of the record keepers, the people that took down the notes and things. But between Egyptian and Hinduism, like, what kind of connection is there? None. And yet we see across all of these different pantheons family trees. I can't ignore things like this. This is data. These are our aliens. Now, these are not all the aliens, but they are some of the aliens. The gods, the Elohim, are aliens. They're not from Earth. They created us here on Earth. They come to Earth. They might stay on Earth for a long time, but they were not born here. They're not earthlings. We are the earthlings. Jesus said, I am from another world. Okay? So we have the Divine Council. The 12 most senior members of the royal family make up the Divine Council. We could populate this with some of those pantheon charts, but that's just a snapshot in time. It wouldn't be accurate to today. So we know there are people there. We don't know who is there, what their names are. We could guess that some of them are probably pretty persistent. Now, the Elohim operate on a monarchy system. And I'm not sure whether this is actually all worth going into right now, but let's just try to do it real quick here. Across the Gospels, Jesus talked about the kingdom 63 times. When the Bible, including Jesus, speaks of a kingdom, a king, princes, and royal activities, it's not metaphor. It's not metaphor. Again, Christianity is a flavor of Gnosticism. They want to turn everything that's real and literal into airy-fairy stories. And then accuse people like me, oh, you're taking things too literally. You don't understand. I think that you're actually telling a cover story. Things are literal. We're told in Genesis 1:26 and 27 that we are mirrors of the Elohim. We are made in their image and likeness. Dude, that is the first page of the Bible, and you're not going to distract me from that. We are told who we are. We are made from them, in their image, in their likeness. So they have a monarchy. So when Jesus is talking about a king of the kingdom, his father, he's not being metaphorical. He's talking about a literal place, physical people, physical monarchy. So a monarchy is an individual ruler such as a king, queen, emperor, empress who heads the monarchy. So this is what the kingdom is, right? And we can go through these things. So they have court, the royal entourage or inner circle of officials and family members surrounding a monarch. Members of the king's court, senior family members, advisors help manage royal engagement and state duties. The court is a physical place where the monarch resides and official duties, ceremonies, and social gatherings take place. This is the great throne room in heaven. Okay, so we have a monarchy, a form of government in which a single person, usually a king or queen, holds supreme authority. The position is typically hereditary, passed down through generations. The kingdom is a constitutional monarchy where the monarch's powers are limited by law. And it's the same with the kingdom. And all I've done here is show that this is actually just the United Kingdom's monarchy. And we have these monarchies all around the world. All the oldest systems around the world are monarchies. Where did we get it from? Jesus is not just coming into our world and using our language. There wasn't a monarchy in Jesus' day. It was a Roman Empire. So Jesus is not using this language accidentally. He's being quite intentional. As above, so below. Earth's kingdoms are mirrored after the original model from the kingdom. We did not invent these structures that exist all over the world, from Africa to the Middle East to Europe. We are simply copying from the people that made us and set up civilization here on Earth. Now, this is important. I wanted to throw this in here. Kingdom versus heaven. A lot of people get this mixed up. These are not the same thing. The kingdom is the ruling principality operating as a monarchy. Heaven is a physical place that is the main headquarters of the kingdom. It is the kingdom of heaven. You cannot use kingdom and heaven interchangeably. Heaven is a physical place. The kingdom is the monarchy that rules everything. Not the same thing. When Jesus is talking about the kingdom being within you, he's not talking about some Gnostic thing. He's not being esoteric. He's talking about the ruling authority of the kingdom resides in you. You can choose one kingdom over another. Okay, and that's why Jesus said you got to choose between the two lords. The Lord that promises you earthly wealth and prosperity in exchange for obedience, Yahweh, or the one who comes and can't offer you all that, but will offer you eternity in heaven, Jesus, and says, pick one. You can't serve two lords, for you will love one and despise the other. And of course, that's what we see. You're talking about Yahweh with any Christian today, and they ignore the words of Jesus, no matter what he said, because Yahweh said something different. Okay, great. Jesus said to pick one or the other, and you better do that real quick, because things are about to go down. Now that we've kind of looked at some of the structure, let's look at some of the imagery. This is just as interesting as all the religious art that we looked at. So we're going to look at the winged disc. This is the main symbol that represents the Elohim, the Father. We're going to look at different images of the Elohim. We'll see they're actually real physical people. And we're going to look at some of these handbags that have been found connected to the tree of life. The tree of life isn't just in the Bible. The tree of life is in multiple cultures and goes back through history. That's one of the ways that we can so easily connect all this together. And I've got a video called The Handbags of the Gods, where I solve one of these archaeological mysteries, one of the first things I ever found. So the winged discs, let's look at these winged discs. We've got these, this is Zoroastrianism, and we see these figures around the ancient Near East, across different cultures. This represents here in Egypt. Let me blow these up so that I can zoom into them a little more. Okay, so we see this winged disc pattern. Here's a capstone for a pyramid. This tells you something. Capstone for a pyramid, and there's no symbol above the winged disc, because the winged disc represents the top. There can't be anything above the winged disc, right? I can't read hieroglyphics, but I'm sure this has been easily translated, and I can guarantee you this is referring to rulership and who's in charge, and signifying that the ultimate authority here is the Father, represented by this winged disc. And yes, those are cobras coming off of that winged disc, and we see those cobras in other places too. We see these little lines here that look like they, or may have been serpents, or even here, but in the Egyptian one we see a little more detail. Okay, these are beautiful figures we see all across the ancient world. We see these guys above this symbol that represents the Father above the tree of life all the time. We'll just go backwards on these ones. The winged disc is the representation of the king. He is the top. There is nobody above him. We find it in all kinds of cultures all around the world. You can see it here. Okay. Again, here you see that there are cobras coming off here, along with these big wings. So this is a common symbol across multiple cultures all around the world, multiple time periods, multiple locations, different people, no internet. They weren't talking to each other as far as we know. Of course they were, because they're all from the same place. They're all the same family. So all of these different cultures are talking about the winged disc, which is the symbol of the Father. They all knew the Father. Okay? And a lot of these things were built before humans were even created. Then we see these Elohim, and we see them carved into stone. And so here's a rather popular image. We have here two figures standing before this, tree, bush thing. And what do we see on the top? The winged disc. Here we have the Father and his two primary sons, Jesus and Yahweh. Yahweh here is on the left, the right-hand side of the Father at this point, right? So you're looking at that, but you've got to put yourself in the Father's position, which means Yahweh here is now going to be on the right-hand side of the Father, and Jesus here is on the left-hand side of the Father. And these other figures that are behind them, we might see them in other figures. Here we go. Let me just blow this one up a bit. So here we've got their attendants. Now, I speculate, it's hard to know exactly, but it looks like we're probably dealing with Gabriel, the Archangel Gabriel, and here is almost definitely the Archangel Michael. Now, a lot of people, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, try to blur the lines between Jesus and Michael. They say that the Archangel Michael is Jesus. No, the Archangel Michael is the angel of Jesus, the messenger of Jesus. These guys are emissaries, they're bodyguards, they're protectors of the two sons. They're always by their side, but unless they're going off and doing something and relaying a message. And so what we have here is the Father and the two sons, Yahweh and Jesus. And of course, now that Yahweh has rebelled against the kingdom and has been cast down to earth as the devil, when everything is being restored, we learn that Jesus is being newly placed into the right hand of the Father. He's not in these carvings, but he will be, because this dude, Yahweh, Enlil Nunamnir, turned against the kingdom, wanted to be the Father, failed in his mission. And we see this story in Greek and Roman pantheon mythologies, where we see that Jupiter tried to overthrow Saturn and Zeus tried to overthrow Kronos. And in those earthly stories, he says he was successful. Not quite. But all through the ancient world, we see these things. Now, here's this thing again, right? And wait, they've got these bags in their hands. Okay, now they're looking like birds here. This is a cultural thing. They don't actually look like birds. They look like humans, like these guys. But we've got the same symbology. We've got them standing before this bush. What is this bush here? This is the tree of life. What are they holding in their handbags here? Like this pine cone shaped fruit. That is the fruit of the tree of life. And what do the buckets do? They hold the fruit of the tree of life. You come into the garden of the gods and you go harvesting and you put it into your little bucket. That is what the handbags of the gods are. We have a whole video on that. So here we can see it a little bit clearer. Just blow this one up a touch. Great image here of Yahweh, unless this image has been flipped, standing before the tree of life, plucking the fruit from the tree of life. And we see these figures like this all over the place. Okay, here's a beautiful face on profile. They're people. They're a little bit taller than we are, but they vary in height just like we vary in height. So their shortest people are going to be shorter than our tallest people. But overall, they're about 1.5 to 2 feet taller than humans. Bear in mind that white Caucasian men have grown so incredibly tall the last few hundred years. We are a lot taller than most of our ancestors. Now, there's always outliers, but so now, I'm 6 foot, but there are men today starting to approach 7 foot. It's getting more and more common to get more and more taller white men. And those men are going to be taller than some of them, that's for sure. Especially their women, because their women are just like our women. They're much, much shorter than the men. Okay? So we see this imagery all across the world. And here we can start to see from other cultures. Like, look at this. This is from a southern culture. We've got a guy here, he's wearing some astronaut mask. He appears to be in like a flying thing. It looks like a dragon, and he's holding the handbag. Here we've got an Aztec symbol here, again, holding the bucket in his hand. Here we've got a picture. Obviously, Jesus doesn't really look like this, but this is an artist's interpretation of Jesus. We know this because he's represented by the fish, the water, and because he's facing towards the tree of life from the right-hand side, which once everything is restored, is all going to change, and he's going to be restored to the right hand of the Father. That's probably already happened. So all across the world, we see all of these different things here. Okay? And they'll say, oh, this is Nimrod. Okay. Here we see in Hinduism, here is Shiva. Shiva is sitting underneath one of the fruit of the trees of life. There are two handbags here. This one has been a bit broken and decayed over time. This one is very easily legible. You can see the handle, it loops over the branch. And you see him sitting at the bottom of the tree here. You see another one here from Hinduism. Again, you see the fruit of the tree of life. You see a handbag here on the left. You see a handbag here on the right. I'm not sure if we know where this one is from. Sumba, an island in eastern Indonesia. It's a long way from the Middle East, the ancient Near East. And yet here we see this totem pole, and we see that here is another one sitting here with a handbag, and we see these handbags all over the place. And let's get a little more specific about that handbag. This is one of the best ones that we have in stone. And here we can see on this bag, this was the one long time ago that kind of sealed the deal for me and my interpretation of these things. This handbag here, obviously just a representation of a handbag. It's not an actual handbag, can't put anything in it. But here we see the flower. And what do you think this is? Do you think these are eyes? These four things here? So I've got 4 flowers and 4 what? I mean, this is pretty amazing. This is a cross-section of a seed. Once you see it, it's like, wow, it really is. These are not eyes. There's no eyeballs in the middle of these or anything like that. This is, just search for a cross-section of a seed. You'll see that's what this is. This is a cross-section of a seed. Okay? And we see this all through history. So we see these buckets. You can see here the joints on the bucket. So maybe these buckets were actually a real thing. Well, they are. They were. They are, because we have one. Now let me stretch this so we can zoom into it. So this is thanks to J.J. Ainsworth, who is a hobbyist who goes around to different places and films things and takes photos, which we're very grateful for. I don't think this is a recreation. I think this is an actual handbag bucket of the gods that has been left behind. The reason I don't think it's a reproduction is because reproductions usually look like this, not like the real thing. Now, is it possibly a reproduction? Sure, it's possible, but I don't think so. This is supposedly from 810 BC estimated, and you can see here on the iconography of the bucket the very things we've just been looking at. How's that? These characters made humans. They existed here. They built out the ancient world long before we came along. And then they started to leave, and they created us to manage the planet in their place. All along the belt of this bucket, we see these figures, the same figures that we were just looking at just right above here. Okay? Oh, where are we? Okay, that's a good one. Same thing. And you see the bucket in their hand here. This guy here, you can just see it. He's carrying a bucket. All across the world, different cultures, right? This is not ancient Near East. Look at this. He's holding the bucket in his hand. This one holding the bucket in his hand. This is not ancient Near East. These guys ran the planet. They're the aliens. Now, there are other species outside of the Elohim as well that are visiting Earth. But this tells us that we know aliens pretty well. They're in our Bible. we've been reading the Bible through the lens of Christianity, and when we do that, we're just reinforcing a preset bias. We come in with what we call an a priori. We know, and we try to fit everything into that instead of looking at the data and trying to determine, well, what does all this mean? Okay? What does all of this mean? All right. Next, let's talk about Nibiru. We could also call Nibiru heaven. So we've looked at the UFOs. We've seen how the same religious artists don't draw demons as UFOs and don't draw UFOs as demons. Demons look like people with wings. UFOs look like vehicles, physical craft. We've looked at how the Elohim were here before us. We see them all across the world. We can match up the main players reasonably easy. And we see that there was a monarchy that ran the world before and after humans. What about Nibiru, heaven? So Nibiru has many names. It's called Planet 9, Planet 10, Planet X, Nibiru, and my favorite, the Planet of the Crossing. And the reason it gets this name, the Planet of the Crossing, is because we're looking at these objects across our solar system that have these extreme orbits that are not common. Obviously, if we were to zoom into this, we'd see the orbital plane here is very, very small in this image, right here in the middle only. And then we find these other objects, comets and all kinds of things, and small planets that we don't even talk about, that don't even have proper names, that have all of these other orbits. And the Planet of the Crossing has what we speculate. Well, actually, they speculate it looks more like this. I don't think it is. I think it's more an elongated, like a teardrop orbit, but that's just me. And this is an artist representation. I think this is actually from NASA. Now we can talk about NASA a little bit here. I know some of you don't like NASA, and NASA certainly lied to us about things. But not all the people working at NASA are liars. And some of them are quite independent and doing really good work. So we're going to look at some of that right now. What is Nibiru? Well, Nibiru is probably heaven. I can't say for sure, that's why I'm saying probably, but it very most probably is. This is where the Elohim live. This is their planet. This is the world Jesus was talking about when he said he was from another world. So let's look at some of the latest news on Planet 9 as of right now. Okay. I just used AI to grab some of this for me. Old infrared survey data produced new candidate signals in 2025. Multiple teams have been mining IRIS and Akari all-sky infrared surveys for a very slow-moving object consistent with a distant planet, reporting a small number of candidate pairs that would need follow-up to confirm. Okay. The Rubin Observatory, in its first imagery, which happened in June 23rd, 2025. That's just, I just got AI to pull these for me. Rubin's first public imagery was released June 23, 2025, and the facility is expected to be a major tool for increasing the sample of distant Kuiper Belt objects and constraining or finding Planet 9. So this is not some internet conspiracy theory by weirdos like me. This is being done by real people, and not just at NASA, but by other space agencies and groups, even private groups around the world. Let's look at some of the players that are involved in this. Who are the primary researchers? There's three individuals that we want to look at today as primary individuals, and another person who was just murdered, who you will know about when we get to it. But first, let's look at NASA. And again, okay, you can criticize NASA for lying to us. Obviously, they've lied to us. There's a lot of propaganda and stuff at NASA. But these guys, I don't think, are part of that. These are very independent people that have access to the instruments and are able to go looking for things. So This is Mark Kuchner. Is that how you say it, Kuchner? NASA scientist and citizen science-led associated with Backyard Worlds, Planet 9. So he's part of this project. He's the lead at NASA, but there are people all around the world that are involved in this project called Backyard Worlds Planet 9. And they're all just people like me that are interested, that might have access. Maybe I could go. I've been to the CU Boulder Observatory multiple times to look at planets. Went there with my friend Tony Haller one night. And they're looking for Planet 9. Serious people absolutely are convinced that it's real, and we are looking for it. And the James Webb Space Telescope, I say, was purposely built to find it. Ultra-sensitive infrared telescope. That's what you need to find a distant dark planet like Nibiru. So this is a NASA-supported volunteer search that uses infrared survey data to hunt for nearby brown dwarfs and possible distant solar system objects, including Planet 9 candidates. And that is what I think Nibiru is, and so do others. It is a very old, collapsed binary star that has become a brown dwarf star. It's now cold, it's super, super hard, and they don't live on the surface of this planet like we do. They live inside of the planet. There's so much more room inside of a planet than outside of a planet. On the outside, you've just got the surface. But inside, you've got so many different levels and layers, it's not funny. And we can see when we look at like Derinkuyu in Turkey, which is the underground city there we found about 19, 20 years ago. And now we're finding more and more of these underground cities all across the world, and we will continue to find them. The Elohim lives underground. And we see suggestions of this even in the end of Revelation, where it's talked about, there was no more sun, but the glory of the Lord illuminated everything from within. Okay, so it's got an eternal light source, right? They're living inside the planet. An advanced species is not going to live on the surface. They're going to live inside. It's like you don't live on the roof of your house. Why would you do that? You'd be exposed to the elements. It's not very great. You want to be inside your house where you can control the climate and everything. And that just makes a lot of sense. So he is from NASA and he's working on this. Now let's look at Caltech. And there's a lot going on in the Pasadena Caltech campus. Let's read about these two guys. We'll get to Carl here in a minute, who was just murdered. He is not a direct, he's not working with Mike and Konstantin, but he's working on the same campus and he's doing a lot of the same research. So there's a lot of crossover here, but he wasn't specifically working with the search for Planet 9. Just want to make that clear, because someone's going to go, he wasn't working for, I know he wasn't, but he's on the same campus. He's using a lot of the same instruments, technology. These two guys are looking for another planet. So is this guy. He looks for exoplanets around distant stars and things like that. So let's read. I asked AI to pull this for me as well. So Batagin, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Brown's Planet 9 hypothesis says the odd clustered orbital patterns of a small set of very distant Kuiper belt objects are best explained if there is an unseen massive planet far beyond Neptune. In their model, a planet roughly several Earth masses on a long tilted eccentric orbit, hundreds of astronomical units. An astronomical unit is the distance between the sun and the Earth. And so we take that large distance and we say that's 1 unit. And now we're going to calculate other things across our solar system via that astronomical unit. Okay, so that's what an AU or astronomical unit is. It's the distance between the sun and the Earth. So if we say 3 astronomical units, we mean 3 times the distance from the sun to the Earth. All right. So in their model, a planet roughly several Earth masses on a long tilted eccentric orbit, hundreds of astronomical units from the sun, would, over time, gravitationally shepherd those small bodies into similar orientations and also help explain other long-range features like objects on unusually high inclination or detached orbits. The claim is not that Planet 9 has been directly observed, but that its gravity is a plausible common cause for multiple orbital anomalies. These guys are totally convinced it's real, and they're not the only ones. In fact, I would say they're more convinced than I am. And I think it's probably true. But these guys these two guys have committed their entire lives so far to finding this planet. So let's look at Konstantin. Here he is. He's a professor of planetary science at the California Institute of Technology, works on planetary dynamics and solar system formation, and is best known for proposing the Planet 9 hypothesis based on the clustered orbits of distant Kuiper Belt objects. And then we've got Mike Brown, professor of planetary astronomy at Caltech, observational astronomer focused on distant solar system bodies, discovered multiple dwarf planets, and became widely known for work related to Pluto's reclassification. Is that good or bad? And for co-developing the Planet 9 hypothesis with Badajian. So these are real people doing real work at Caltech. They work with Mark Kuchner at NASA. They collaborate a lot. But now let's talk about this poor guy, Carl Grillmeyer. Now, you may have heard his name recently. This individual was just murdered within the last week, which is extremely unfortunate. Carl Grillmeyer was an astrophysicist and research scientist at Caltech's IPAC Science and Data Center. So he's working on the same Pasadena campus as these two guys, but he's not working in the same building. He was best known for mapping faint stellar streams in the Milky Way, long trails of stars left behind by disrupted clusters and dwarf galaxy, using them to reconstruct the galaxy's history and to test models of dark matter structure. Now, this is the part that's more interesting. He also worked with infrared space telescope data tied to exoplanet and small body science, helping turn large survey archives into usable, publishable results. So although Carl was not active in the search for Planet 9, Nibiru, Planet 10, Planet of the Crossing, his work had a lot of crossover with it. He obviously would know the other two guys. And could he have stumbled across Planet 9 in his work? Something related to it? Oh, yes. He is effectively looking for the same thing. All three of them are looking for distant planets. Unfortunately, he was just murdered. Carl Grillmeyer, 67 years old, a Caltech astronomer at IPAC, was found shot on the front porch of his home in Llano, California on Monday, February 16, 2026, after sheriff's deputies responded to a morning call. He was pronounced dead shortly after. Authorities arrested Freddie Snyder, 29, and prosecutors have charged him with Grillmeyer's murder with additional charges reported in connection with other alleged crimes, while public reporting says the motive remains unclear and under investigation. He is not the only one in high levels like this that has been taken out. A month ago, we lost a very famous physicist who did lots of work on gravity. It's possible that this is just a random act of violence and has no connection whatsoever to his work. I saw an overhead photo of his house. He's not in a built-up area. There's no neighbors. He's in the middle of nowhere. Poor guy. I would love to know what happened there, and I hope more information comes to light, but I doubt it will. But the point here is that this planet appears to be real, and people are convinced it's real. Real scientists are convinced it's real, from NASA to Caltech, and now we've got high-level people being murdered. Interesting. Now, the orbit of Nibiru. A little bit of speculation here, and then we're going to jump into some real speculation. But let's look at the orbit, or what we might be able to tell about the orbit of Nibiru. Oh, I do have a photo of it? I do. That'll be it there. Okay, great. Probably 3,600 years ago, according to the King's List, is the orbit of Nibiru. I didn't write that very well. The Weld-Blundell prism, which is in the photo we're about to see, a four-sided cuneiform prism preserving a version of the Sumerian King List, naming rulers from before the flood, and then dynasties down into the early 2nd millennial BC. All the periods of rule are divisible by 3,600 years, leading to the speculation this aligns with the orbit of Nibiru. So it's this document here. We have multiple copies. Now, when I first started doing this, we had 17 copies of the King's List. Now I think we have 19, although I haven't searched for a couple of years, and maybe we have more. This is all written in cuneiform. This is very easily readable. And there's not many people who can read cuneiform, but, you know, a computer can read, AI can read it, no problem. We know how to translate this pretty much perfectly, just as we do with ancient Hebrew. There's not a lot of difficulty in translating here. So even though this looks like a bit of a mess, it's actually very readable, and we know what's going on here. And we have multiple copies of this. They don't all come in stone like this, in one stone. Some are in tablets, and some are carved onto solid stone walls and things like that. But this lists different kings and how long they were reigning. And sometimes they reign for 3,600 years. Sometimes they reign longer, but they're all divisible by 3,600. This is the primary tool. You may have heard of Zechariah Sitchin, and certainly there's a lot of crossover here with some of his ideas. Zechariah Sitchin was pretty firm that this proves that the orbit of Nibiru is every 3,600 years. I think there's other circumstantial evidence as well that suggests that. I think the case is fairly sound. What I will say, though, is these guys do not agree with that. They are saying the orbit of Planet 9, Planet X, is, well, there's like an average of around 17,000 years. But it varies from, I think, about 8,500 years to 27,000 years. There's been lots of numbers put out because we just don't really know. Is it possible that they're off by a lot and it's actually a 3,600 year orbit? Yeah, I think it is a 3,600 year orbit. And I think that makes perfect sense, and why we have a hexadecimal base 60 system all over the place in the ancient world. Let's look at some biblical clues for when this planet may have last been here. Bible clues. We have the fall of Yahweh, not the fall of man, the fall of Yahweh. And we have the Exodus, right? These two events are basically the same event. One happened immediately prior to the other. How then do we date the Exodus? Now, of course, in scholarly circles, there's some scholars that say there is no evidence of the Exodus being a real event at all. And we must entertain that. I think the Exodus did happen. I think, though we don't have a lot of evidence for it happening, there is fragmentary evidence, and Hebrew scholar Dan McClellan says that the event did not happen. Other scholars say it did. Some say it did. Some say it didn't. I think it did. And these four dates here are the four most accepted dates for when the Exodus actually occurred. And that's interesting because Yahweh tried to overthrow his father and was cast down to earth, where he immediately, or very quickly, went to Egypt and found Moses and convinced him to talk to the people, and he pulled those Hebrews out of Egypt and then slaughtered them all in the desert over 40 years. Well, if we look at these dates, it's very interesting. So this is the literal biblical chronology. So if we add up the things that we can find in the text to try to make sense, it happened in 1446 BC, which was about 3,471 years ago. Oh, how interesting. How close is that to 3,600? That would mean the planet would be approaching now and would get here pretty soon, right? And as we go through these other particular ways of working out when the Exodus occurred, whether it was the start of Ramses II or the end of Ramses II, or we've got Merneptah Stele, which gives a date for the word Israel, which is in 1208. So these are interesting dates. The biblical chronology, I think it's interesting. This comes the closest. That would mean that if the fall of Yahweh, which would have happened right as the planet was nearby, because he was cast down to earth. It can't be cast down to earth if it's not nearby. And then his first action was to go and remove the Hebrews from Egypt and go on this stealing, killing, destroying mission for centuries and centuries. Any of these dates, though, whether it's 3233 all the way up to 3,471 years ago, would tell us that if Nibiru, heaven, was here when Yahweh fell and took the Hebrews out of Egypt, that would mean the planet is now starting to approach. Well, that explains a lot. That explains why we're looking for it. That explains the secrecy. It explains a lot of things. So it's hard to say when the planet will get here, but I can tell you that I think I might say it in here. Let me read what I speculate, okay? This is all my speculation, okay? It's not that we don't have some circumstantial evidence for this, but still, this is my speculation. That Nibiru, an old binary dwarf star that is now occupied within, not without, is heaven. It is the heaven that Jesus talked about. It is the heaven that John is describing at the end of the book of Revelation. That it has an orbit of 3,600 Earth years. That it was last in proximity to Earth when Yahweh fell and was cast down to Earth, roughly the time of the Exodus. That discovering this planet could have major implications, especially with alien UFO disclosure. You see how it all comes together. That the planet is likely expected sometime around the next 100 years, meaning regular traffic back and forth will now become more common due to its proximity to us. They're not going to wait till it's right here. There's going to be like a 200-year window where they're close enough that you're going to get increased traffic back and forth to the planet over that period of time, okay? That will be our future home. That its approach is the main cause of the planetary disturbances Jesus told us we should expect. When we read Matthew 24 and other parts of the Gospels, and we see Jesus saying the planetary disturbances that are going to occur immediately before his return. All makes sense. This body coming into our solar system and crossing through the orbital plane will mess up things on all the planets. Every time it crosses through, things happen. Major earthquakes, tsunamis, weather events, all kinds of things. And sometimes it's seriously catastrophic, and other times it's just disruptive. That the return of Jesus will be before this planet is visible in our skies with the naked eye. So I expect the return of Jesus to be before we can see Nibiru in the sky. Okay? So, aliens and UFOs. There's more context that needs to be brought in on this whole thing. There's so much going on. Now, what's next? What's next? An alien invasion. The return of the Elohim. And we've gone a long time today, so we're not going to cover these things now, but we're going to come back in weeks to come, and we're going to start diving into these things. What is this going to look like? An alien invasion and the return of the Elohim. I appreciate you joining me today. I know we've gone through a lot. I appreciate you spending all of this time here today. There is so much to cover in this. And now that everyone else is talking about it, we're going to talk about it a lot more. So, hope you've enjoyed this. Please share this with somebody. I'm sure there's information in here that no one has ever heard before. So share it far and wide. And I will see you next week, the week after, with even more information about everything that's going on with UFOs and aliens and the alien invasion that is coming, the return of Jesus and his entire family, the return of the Elohim. Thank you so much for joining me.